I could go on forever about the sacral and generators. Only generators have a defined sacral. On Thursday and Friday, I'll do just that. I'll spend 2 days talking about generators for generators. But what I want to stress about the sacral center today is an understanding about the way in which the sacral dominates life. Generators dominate the world we live in. 70% of humanity are generators. The sacral center dominates our world. It simply does. It is out of the sacral center that life itself is generated, and the patterns of life on this planet are generated. The sacral center is about work. It is about work. It is the basic imperative of life. Anything that comes into the world works. It does. And it works for its survival. And remember that the sacral, being the center of our reproductive capacity, is deeply aligned to our genetic imperatives. 2 of the genetic roll gates, the 27 and the 59, are in the sacral. It's the sacral that determines our world, literally. Now, the sacral is dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional because rather than sacral beings living out the nature of the sacral, which is to make decisions in response, that is the truth of all generators, make decision in response, that as long as the sacral center is not making decisions in response, what we get in this life is that we get stuck. I want you to think that the whole planet is stuck. It's stuck. It is. You know, all the claptrap in the esoteric world, in the New Age, about a dawning of new consciousness. Excuse me, we're stuck. We're stuck right here. Right here. We're stuck. And we are deeply frustrated. You know, it's not like there's 2 billion people listening to this broadcast. It's not like all the generators in the world are hearing about their power and their capacity and their beauty. Not so. We live on a plane of frustration and stuckness. You know, this is where consciousness is now. The transformation of that consciousness is possible through the transformation of generators. But the not self, the most powerful motor, you know, has no chance against the not self. Because the not self rules you through your mind, and you trust your minds, even though you know that they don't really work for you. You know that. After all, if your minds were really helpful to you, you wouldn't be here. You know? They're not. They're not. So the sacral center has an enormous importance in life. And it's one of the most essential things in all the years that I've been teaching. My deepest focus has been on generators. Because they can change quickly, easily. They can be transformed quickly, easily. All I have to do is honor their strategy. And the strategy is simple. It's deeply simple. You know, just make your decisions in response. Yes, I know that it's frightening to think that you have to wait for life to come to you. But then again, the truth is, we all do. It is the way life works. And it does come to you. And when you're correct, you get what is correct for you. And when you make decisions as yourself, you have your own unique authority. That unique authority takes away, strips away the power of the not-self. And rather than your mind being a spokesman and an authority in your life, it begins to recede to the place where it belongs, to your research department, to your capacity to be able to communicate the essence of your uniqueness to somebody else. You know, I'm basically an antisocial being. I don't find conversations with extras or furniture to be very stimulating. I don't. And it's not an arrogance. It's a boredom. It's a boredom with a homogenized language and concepts that emerge out of beings. What their not self is. Second-hand people trying to represent themselves when in fact they're not even there. See, every time that I deal with somebody who's gone through their process in design, it's a pleasure for me. Because they're different. They're different. They are a unique expression of themselves. They're not expressing the second hand. They're expressing themselves. That's interesting. It's the whole point of being able to deal with understanding that you cannot transform yourselves mentally, that your mind is not your ally in this process, that the only way is through the vehicle. The only way is the simple mechanisms of the vehicle. Follow the strategy. You'll see for yourself. It doesn't take long to recognize it works. It does. Now the sacral center is here for work. And generators come into the world, and because they don't enter into life correctly, the work that they must do because it's their design is their greatest burden in life. Because it's work they do not want to do. It's work that makes them deeply frustrated. It's work that's not fulfilling. And I don't just mean their careers, the work of their family life, their work, period. Their busyness in the world. You know, when work and the vast majority of humanity that are designed for work don't enter into the right work, we have chaos. No wonder we're stuck. We just do. Everything about being a generator is understanding it's a motor that drives your life. It's a motor. If you don't use that motor properly, it's going to give you trouble. It just will. You know, it's like that car that you have in the garage that you ignore for decades. You know? It's not like you can just go in there and turn on the engine. It isn't. If the sacral engine is not used properly, slowly but surely it will die. And that death that comes to the sacral being is a frightening one because it's one empty of truth of self. And generators are only here to know themselves. They're the only type that are here to know themselves. I'll talk about this tomorrow so you understand the differences in the types and their perspective in life. But for the sacral being, everything is who they are. Because in them lies the pure authority to rule their lives. A pure authority that communicates with them. It's there. It's there. It is the essence of their being expressing itself to them moment by moment by moment by moment in their lives. And the moment you trust in your sacral response to guide you, the way to the door, the way to awakening is very, very fast. You get to the place of surrender. You get to the place of recognizing that your mind does not know what's coming. And you don't care. Because whatever comes, you're ready. Oh, you don't know what it is to be empowered like that. You don't. You don't know what it is to be a rock within your own truth. You don't. And at the moment that you know that no matter what life offers you, you are equipped. In that moment, tomorrow doesn't mean anything. Today is everything. And in that everything is the vision of what life can be for you. What you get to really see. And who comes here for you. Not what you're looking for. It's your mind that's looking. It's your mind. You think you want a lover. It's your mind that's looking. It's your mind. If you're a generator and your mind's looking for a lover, good luck. You think you're going to find it? Oh, it's that one. Yeah. If that being doesn't come to you, they're not for you. And if they don't come to you, you are never going to know whether they're for you or not. Because it comes out of your sacral, and it comes out of your response. The thing about 70% of humanity is that they don't value themselves. They don't. They don't think they can get what's here for them. They don't see that it will all come to them. Generators have been raised to be manifestors. They've been raised to be frustrated. They've been groomed for frustration. And they live it their whole lives. And that frustration tells them that love doesn't work and careers don't work and blah, 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 and on and on. You think the mind of such a being is going to say, okay, we're going to wait, Prince Charming's coming. Fat chance. The mind will make a fool out of you. It will humiliate you. It will remind you that nobody's here for you. You've got to go find what you need. It's not your friend. You know, it's not. It's just an instrument. You know, it doesn't care. Have you ever noticed when you're making a decision that your mind's already calculated what will happen if it messes up? You know, it's like buying insurance, you know, life insurance. I could never figure that one out. You know? Anyway, think about what it's like to come into the world and you're a manifester, a projector, or a reflector. You come into the world without a defined sacral. So all the other types, non-sacral beings, which means that nothing conditions them more than generators. As a matter of fact, manifestors, projectors, and reflectors are designed to be conditioned by generators. Because if it weren't for the generators, we wouldn't be alive. Period. Because they're the ones that generate life. So manifestors, projectors, and reflectors are addicted to generators and generating, because it's the life force. It's the availability to respond to life, to sex, to all kinds of things. The strategy of the open sacral center is a very funny question. Do you know when enough is enough? And the open sacral center doesn't know when enough is enough. Manifestors don't know when enough is enough. Projectors don't know when enough is enough. Reflectors do not know when enough is enough. Now think about that as a decision. If you don't know when enough is enough, you know, then that becomes your decision making. Your decision making is, I don't know when to stop. So I'm just going to keep on going. And I'm going to keep on going. And I'm going to keep on going. Manifestors, projectors, and reflectors did not come into the world to work. They didn't. They didn't. Yet when you see them in the world, you see super slaves. I mean, real super slaves. I'm a terrible example of a manifester. I mean, I'm awake. Manifestors are so repressed. I mean, when you see manifestors in the world, they're so incredibly repressed and burnt out from being super slaves. And projectors, totally exhausted by the generator world. Totally exhausted. Don't know when enough is enough. You see, if you're not a generator, you better honor your strategy. You know, otherwise you're a super slave, not knowing when enough is enough, driving yourself until you're just a collapsed being. Sleep. These are vehicles. They need their rest. They do. And rest is different depending on whether you're sacral or not. If you're a sacral being, if you're a generator, you're here to work until you're exhausted. Each day. Each day. And exhaustion doesn't mean that it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're still cranking. You may get exhausted at 9. It's not the point. The point is the point of exhaustion. It's a motor. It's a motor. And what you have to see about this motor is that only when the motor is done can you sleep properly. One of the great crimes against generators is the imposition of sleeping times to generator children. So you take a generator child that insists that he goes to bed at 7 o'clock. Now obviously when you're dealing with not-self parents, they would like some privacy and quiet and blah, blah, blah. There's all these not-self strategies to, avoid dealing with, truth. The moment you take a generator child and you condition it to go to sleep when you want, and again you're conditioning it to be a manifester, what you do is slowly destroy their energy system. It's not like they wake up in the morning and they feel correct. They don't. They don't. Generators are not here to be long sleepers. That's not what they're about. Everything about a generator is when you're exhausted, go to sleep. Don't have a set time, which means have your own bedroom. Don't get dragged to bed with somebody because they want to go to bed at 8 o'clock. If it's not for you, it's not for you. You really have to understand that it's so important to sleep properly. Generators who impose a bedtime on themselves, basically what they're doing to themselves is that they're going to give themselves sleep problems. Those sleep problems can, they can lead to all kinds of physical problems. Weakness in the body and, drowsiness and a sense that one doesn't really have juice anymore and blah, blah, blah and all of this stuff. If you're not a generator, you're not here to go to sleep when you're super exhausted, which is what the conditioning is. If you're any of the 3 types living with a generator, you have to understand something. You're always under pressure, and you're always under pressure not to know when enough is enough, which means that you're the last one going to bed at night. Close up after me, eh dear? Yeah, the generator goes to sleep, and the projector is prowling around the house until 2 o'clock in the morning, cranked up. And then they collapse and they can barely sleep properly. And they're exhausted the next day. That's not what it's about. See, if you're not a generator, it's essential for you to get into bed before you go to sleep. And what I mean by that is you get into bed and rest. You lie down. You read something, you look at something, whatever the case may be. But you just lie down. And whether that lying down lasts a half an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is doesn't matter. It's the lying down beforehand that's so important. You're not a generator. You're not a generator. You're not here to push yourself to the limit because that's not who you are. And think about those 3 types and their minds. Because all those minds have something in common. What they have in common is they keep on pushing you. Stay up later, work longer. There's that mind pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. It's physically devastating. And just because you know that isn't going to protect you. I have sat in many rooms with just generators. Nothing protects you from that. Nothing. I have 3 generator children. Nothing protects you from that. Nothing. The only thing that protects you is being yourself. If you enter into things correctly as yourself, you're going to get the body that's right for you. You're going to get the sleep that's correct for you. You're going to have energy levels that are functional for you. It's about looking after the vehicle. And the mind doesn't know anything about the vehicle. We already know scientifically that our body gets information faster than our neocortex. Our body already knows things before our mind does, which is the basis of things like NLP. You know, where the position of somebody's eyes, which is happening before they're even aware of it, is already revealing what's going on inside of their head. Because the body works so quickly, faster than the mind. You think you can deal with a generator if you're not a generator, and you're going to deal with that from the mental plane, and you're going to protect yourself that way? What a joke. And a painful joke. Because you'll immediately get caught in the conditioning. Immediately. And there you're off in the don't know what is enough, and away you go. And that becomes part of the strategy for you in your life. You know that you don't know when enough is enough. Drinking, drugs, sex, you name it. Not knowing when enough is enough and paying the price for it. Because it's not your nature. Now we come to the heart center. And the heart center is very complex. It's a little center, so to speak. It only has 4 gates. So it doesn't have as many potentials for definition. But it carries enormous importance in our lives, both in terms of the way in which our lives operate in the outside world, and in terms of the way in which our body functions. In other words, the heart center is deeply, deeply complex. And that when you're dealing with not living out your design properly, that not living out your design properly in terms of an open heart center is not just psychically devastating, it is physically devastating. This is heart attack country. This is stomach ulcers and cancer. This is, carved out gallbladders. This is the collapse of immune systems. You're talking about a very, very significant organ in our body. Now, when you look at the body graph is broken up into circuitries. Those circuitries represent the collective, and you can see the collective on all the outside, both abstract and logical. And the collective is about sharing. There's the individual circuitry, which is all over the body and runs through the middle and is integration. And that individual circuitry is all about empowerment. It's all about mutation. And then there's tribal circuitry. In tribal circuitry, it's the stream that runs in the inside. It sort of forms a circle here and then goes up to the throat. Where all the other streams, so-called streams of awareness, are going up to the throat center, then when it comes to the community, to the tribe, everything about the tribe is going into the ego. And the tribe is about a number of things. First of all, it's about reproduction. That is, it's about making more. Second of all, it's about nourishing the young. Training the young, providing them with strategies for survival. But in order to do those things, the moment there is children, there's the need for community. This is the basis of the tribe. That is, there's the need for food resources, there's the need for proper principles, there's the need for a community bargain in order to be able to establish what a community is, to provide the services of community, security, hygiene, food resources, all of these things, education, all of these things are necessary. On the emotional side, it's all communal. On the splenic side, it's entrepreneurial. It's about the demand within the tribe to make money. That is, there is no way to be able to nurture the young unless one has resources. And in the common language of our time, this is about material resources. So everything about the ego is rooted in the material. The only expression the ego has in the throat is from the ego center up to the throat, the 21 to the 45. Now, this is the channel of materialism. This is all about money. It's all about possession. And everything about the ego center is about the ability to be able to focus on the material, Without the material, we have no way of supporting our young. Without the material, we cannot educate them. Without the material, we cannot provide safe communities, and on and on and on and on and on. In other words, money has to be made. When you look at the heart center, 4 gates in the heart center, 3 are tribal. That is, 3 are communal. The 26, the 40, and the 21. Only the 51st gate, which is part of a channel of initiation, a mystical channel, which really represents the priesthood for the tribe, only that is different in terms of the way the ego operates. Now the ego is the motor of the heart center. We call it ego power. And how we define ego power is we define ego power as will power. Now there's no such thing as free will. And not everybody. It's the most complex of the centers in the sense that there is 11 gates that operate out of the throat center. It's something to recognize about the throat. You know, we often assume that the throat is about doing because of its relationship to the manifester and to the manifesting generator. But the reality is that when you're looking at the throat center, of those 11 gates of the throat center, only 4 of them, you know, the 35, the 12, the 45, and the 20, only those 4 gates out of those 11 gates, only those gates have potential to actually do. The fundamental process of the throat is communication. Communication. See, the ideal of an intellectual world is when each and every one of us operate according to our own authority, and we can make a contribution which is the expression of who we are. The way in which we see the world, the way in which we see our lives, the way in which we express those things. And if each and every one of us were living out their authority, and each and every one of us were expressing that truth, we would finally come to grips with what it means to be a human, and what the human experience is really about. You see, there are enormous gaps in our knowing. I might be a 5-1 clarion, but there's over 60,000 other archetypes. There's all kinds of variations. Everybody has a right, through their own authority, to be an expression of a unique truth. And the throat is our medium of that expression. It is a deeply complex medium. And yet underneath it, the juxtaposition to the heart center, only 4 gates, but 4 basic biological associations. In the throat center, 11 gates, but only 1 association. Thyroid. Thyroid and parathyroid. Thyroid disease is an epidemic. Everybody has a different thyroid. All thyroid measurements are unique. And the fact is that when you have a defined throat and you're not operating correctly as yourself, you're at great risk of thyroid damage. And thyroid impacts your metabolism. Whether you're going to be fast or slow, short or tall, the way in which you're going to metabolize food in your body, all of that are thyroid functions. So when you're dealing with a thyroid-defined throat, it's something to recognize. Just because it's defined doesn't mean it's healthy. If you're not living out your design, it doesn't operate in a healthy way. So many people I know with defined throats, simply have their thyroids removed. And thyroid damage is very unpleasant. Everything about the throat is its capacity to communicate. It has many different voices. And so it is a way in which we attract attention with each other. That's what the throat does. It is our way of reaching across the bridge of the illusion of our separateness to meet the other. It's one of the most important mediums we have for meeting the other. So think about what it's like when you come into the world and you have an open throat. Now, because there's 11 gates, it's not that common. How many people here have an open throat? Well, that's quite a few here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people with an open throat. Interesting. Okay, well, you're all trying to attract attention. And you've been doing that all your life. Because that's the strategy of the not-self of the throat. Attract attention. Prove to everybody you can communicate. Prove to everybody that you can do. Show everybody that you're a throat person. And you're not. And you're not. And there you are, attracting attention. Think about it. If you have an open throat and you have an open ego, you're always trying to prove yourself through attracting attention. And if you have an open spleen that goes along with it, you're always trying to prove yourself by attracting attention, by holding on to people who aren't good for you. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Don't you like that life? Right? Oh, the not self. And you see, your mind is going to take those open centers and it's just going to synthesize them into this grand strategy to keep you messed up. And not give you a chance to be yourself. That open throat center is always trying to attract attention. Think about what that's like. You go into a room with a bunch of people and everybody is, sitting together. That open throat is under enormous pressure to speak. Remember, it amplifies definition. It's under enormous pressure to speak and it starts coming out. And it doesn't stop. And later they have a sore throat. They're hoarse, they have problems with their tonsils, with their adenoids, you name it. Enormous pressure on the throat system, enormous pressure on the thyroid. See, there's a great gift. Remember, every open center, despite the power of its not self, when you're operating correctly, this is the way to wisdom. If you have an open throat, you're here to master communication. Master it. To know who can communicate and who cannot. To experience all the different voices. To experience all the ways of communicating. That's a real gift. It's a real gift. And if you have an open throat and somebody defines your throat and you respond to them, there's no throat damage. And if you have an open throat and you're entering correctly into any situation, you're not going to put damage, you're not going to impact negatively on your throat center. But the only thing that protects you is your strategy. Nothing else. See, the whole point of this exercise today, aside from the obvious horror, because it is, and it's you, the most important thing is to see it's not your mind that's going to help you in this process. It's not. This is not a philosophy course. It's not about changing the way you think. Your mind is going to continue to operate the way it does for the rest of your life. It just will. That's what mind is. It's about you taking charge. The real you. Your mind isn't going to do that. If you're lucky, you'll get to a place where I am. That is a place where the mind takes a back seat in my life. And it does. It doesn't mean I don't use it. You experience it. I have unique outer authority. And so in that way I get to express the value of mind. I communicate with you. You're here to communicate with me, with the other. That's the whole point of mind. But it's not about allowing mind to make decisions for you in this life. It won't make decisions that are good for you. Because it doesn't make decisions for you. It makes decisions for your not self. See, waking up is really easy. But you have to give up on your mind. You do. I'll show you tomorrow. You can trick it, sort of. Sort of. But in the end, you have to see for yourself in experiencing the truth of your strategy. Because in the moment that you experience the truth of your strategy, it puts a deep, deep imprint in you. And you start that process. And each successive decision that you make as yourself, each step along the way reinforces what is truly you. And you begin to meet what is correct for you. Last but not least, the G center, the identity. The G center is very extraordinary. It's very important. It's one of the basic things you learn in human design. Is to recognize that this is the center of who you are. That is, that the G-center represents a way in which the entire wheel, in essence, gets brought directly into the core of the body. If you look at the G-center and you look at its 8 gates form 2 giant crosses in the wheel. One is called the cross of the vessel of love, and one is called the cross of the Sphinx. When you look at this matrix around the wheel, you have 64 hexagrams. And what you'll notice is that every 8 hexagrams, it's over here, every 8 hexagrams, okay, is a new structure in terms of the genetic code. In other words, this 64 is broken down into 8 groups of 8. And the lead hexagram of each of those 8 groups is the 8 gates that are here in the G-center. And those 2 crosses in the wheel that they connect to every zodiacal sign, they connect to every single configuration mathematically in the wheel, and all of that gets integrated into the center, into the identity itself. These 2 crosses are more than that. They are actually a calendar. The vessel of love, the 25 to the 46, and the 10 to the 15. When the sun is in the 25th gate, we have the spring equinox. When the sun is in the 15th gate, we have the summer solstice. When the sun is in the 46th gate, we have the autumnal equinox. When the sun is in the 10th gate, we have the winter solstice. In other words, 4 major seasons of the year. And the other cross is called the cross of the Sphinx, the 13 to the 1, and the 13 to the 7, and the 1 to the 2. And the cross of the Sphinx is about direction. Direction. We have 2 themes in the G-center. The theme of love and the theme of direction. Within the G-center is something called the magnetic monopole. And the magnetic monopole is a magnet that only attracts. It holds you together in the illusion of your separateness, and it moves you along in your geometry. These are 2 essential things. The monopole is your driver. It's driving your vehicle. Your consciousness is the passenger. The driver drives you along your geometry in life. Life is not about time, it's about place. Everything about this life is about where you are. All of us are moving in space. And in the G-center we have these 2 principles. The first principle is direction, that we have a movement or a geometry in space. And the second thing is love. Because in the G-center what we have is the vessel of love, and the vessel of love is basically the theme of the monopole pulling everything towards it. In other words, it is the essence of love. It never repels, it only attracts. If you're somebody who has a defined G-center, you have a defined and very narrow way in which direction and love operate in your life. But if you have an open G-center, then your not-self strategy is very deep. Because you see, you don't have a fixed identity. You don't, and never will. The humor, if you will, of somebody with an open self. They have one friend over here that they get along with. They got another friend over here that they get along with. But they can't bring those 2 friends together. It's just not possible. It won't work. It is their open self that allows them to integrate with just about anybody, because they will mirror the identity of the other. And everything about the open self is that somebody with an open self, their not-self strategy is they're still looking for love and direction. It doesn't matter whether they're in a good relationship. It doesn't matter whether they think they're in the right place or not. The reality is that if you've got an open self, you're always, always looking for love and direction, and that's what your mind tells you. You know, when I would do readings for people with an undefined self, I would always tell them the same thing. You know, if you're in the wrong place, you're with the wrong person. If you're in the right place, you're with the right person. And it's all about place. It's all about place. Look, if you have an undefined self and you meet somebody who's very attractive and they take you to the wrong place, and it doesn't matter what wrong means for you, it's just a matter of taste. You know, they're going to be the wrong person for you. You know, they're going to bring you to the wrong love or the wrong job or the wrong money or the wrong this or the wrong whatever. It's not going to work. And if you have an undefined self and you're in the right place, then you always get the right forces coming to you in your life. And by the way, that right place isn't just about your home. It's about where you work. You know, you may be in the right place at home and feel wonderful, and be in the wrong place at work and don't do well. And then you blame it on all kinds of silly things that have nothing to do with what the truth is. You're just in the wrong place. If you did the same job in the right place, everything would be wonderful. It's all about place. And everything about the not self, everything about, you know, that open center is that if you're not following your strategy, you can't get to the right place because it's not a mental decision. It's not. It's not what the mind thinks is the right place or not. The mind doesn't know. It doesn't. The only thing that really knows is your authority within your strategy. You know, if you're a generator and somebody says to you, you know, are you living in the right place? And they go, that's not the moment to go looking for a place. It isn't. It might be the moment to tell some people and tell an agent that you're interested in a new place. It may be a matter of waiting to see what happens. But the reality is that according to your strategy, it's the only way you can find the right place. If you have people looking for you, you can go with them. You can check out the places they show you. You know, one of them will work for you. And then you have the right place. And then the right people come into your life. All of that begins with your strategy. Only your strategy can lead you to the right place. Now, if you have an undefined self, when you came into this world, you know, unlike what a lot of esoteric people hope for, you didn't choose where you came in. Because if you had an undefined self, you would not choose the places you came into. I guarantee it. You know, basically what happens is that you come in and you're surprised at where you are. Because it's not necessarily the right place. You know, it's like so many babies don't like hospitals. You know, because it's not really the right place. It may be the right place to come in, but it's not the right place to stay. You know, and a child with an undefined self, if they're not in the right place, you're not the right parents. Think about that. You know, my youngest has an open self. We found a house that we loved, that we wanted to buy. And we couldn't just buy that house. You know, if that little one didn't like the house, it just wouldn't work. You know, we would end up being the wrong parents, regardless of how much we care or love or are aware. You know, unfortunately, the little bugger, he liked the house, you know, which is really nice. But had he not liked the house, nothing works. I mean, think about that. Think about those of you who have an undefined self and think about what that meant for you in your life. And if you have a child that has an undefined self, you know, you need to ask them whether they're happy in the neighborhood, in the house. Sometimes it's enough to just change the room for them into another room. But you know, it's very important to keep that in mind. Because again, if you have an open self, if you're in the wrong place, you're with the wrong people, and it doesn't matter whether they're your biological parents or this or that or the next thing. It doesn't. And think about that not self strategy. You know, not knowing whether you're lost or not knowing whether you can find love or not, and your mind always looking, and your mind always telling you where it thinks you'll find love and where it thinks the right direction is for you, and away you go. It's not who you are. It's not who you are. I mentioned to you this morning, looking at your design and seeing your design in both its unconscious and conscious configurations. And, when you're looking at the unconscious, you immediately can see, here's this, I'll push this up for a moment. Here is this design over here, and you have a split definition, throat to the G center, and then you have the sacral over to the spleen and down to the root. And when you look at that, you have to recognize that when you look at the two examples, the personality, you can see in the personality there's only one definition, and you can see that the design is a reflector. At the unconscious level, this is somebody that's deeply, deeply open. Not only that, all this definition down here doesn't exist in either one of those charts. The monopole, your G center, holds you together in an illusion of separateness. It brings together this and this in order to get to that. But when it gets to the bottom, you have a great law. The law is that the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. That when you take the personality and you take the design and you bring them together into the body graph, suddenly all that definition emerges, comes out of nowhere. Very important for you to look at your unconscious. Look at it separate. Look at your conscious. Look at it separate. See the difference between who you think you are. This person thinks of themselves, can only identify with themselves as a leader. And until they do that, they're not healthy. But at the unconscious level, there's nothing there. It's all a surprise. Not only is it all a surprise, but when you see it in the definition itself, you can see that there's no real connection to all of this. There isn't. Unconscious bridges. Look at the nature of openness. It's a good thing I'm leaving the country and the CIA isn't listening. Eh? Okay. George, Mr. George Bush. Now look at the openness of George, please. Let's talk about not-self strategies. Okay? So here is somebody who doesn't know what direction they're going in. Okay? And always looking for love. Here is somebody that is always trying to prove himself. Always. By the way, that open identity, any identity he has is secondhand. I mean, he is George Bush number 2, if you know what I mean. It's a secondhand identity. That's not an original identity. This is somebody who doesn't know the direction, always trying to prove something, always holding on to things that are bad for him, doesn't know when enough is enough, and is always trying to get rid of it in order to be free. You voted for him. This is what you got. Okay. But, what to do, eh? If you didn't vote for this not self, you voted for another one. It doesn't make any difference. Eh? No, all right. Look at Hillary. Look at Hillary and Bill. This is great. Eh? Look at Bill. Eh? He's got an open ajna center. Never had an original thought. Rhodes Scholar. The open mind is very intellectual. As long as it doesn't get into the trip of thinking that it's certain about anything. Always trying to answer everybody else's questions. Here's the open throat, always trying to attract attention. Here's the open ego, always trying to prove himself. Here's the open emotional system. We won't talk about his sex problems. Here's the open emotional system. Here's somebody that's always avoiding confrontation and truth. As a matter of fact, Hillary avoids confrontation and truth. And she holds on what isn't good for her. And it's him. And it's just there, and she's trying to prove something too. It's not like they're living out their design. They're not living out who they are. What's incredible is that we think of them as being, at some level or another, successes, all of these people, that they've done. They're not. Yeah, good. They go to sleep uncomfortable. They're not self too. And they're living out what the not self is. They're not living out who they are. Look at this. You look at somebody like this and whoa, are they conditioned? Everything is about conditioning. Everything. Everything. Look at your designs. I mean, look at your designs. Look at your open centers. Look at them. Count them. You know? Begin to add that up. And by the way, I have not told you the strategies of your open channels and the strategies of your open gates. There's so much conditioning. You know, look at it. You've lived that out. It's not you. That's somebody else. It's all secondhand. It's a secondhand world. You know, there's nothing authentic going on. It's all borrowed. It's all amplified. It isn't truth. You know, these beings do not operate correctly as themselves. They do not. They do not. Now, it's not their fault. They don't know any better. And it's something to really keep in mind. It's not anybody's fault. You don't have an excuse. You know? You don't. You know how this works. And you know that every time you look at one of these open centers, you know your own story in that. And you know where that's taken you. You know, you're not here to live that way. It is the one great truth that I know, is that being here on this plane is actually a delight. It's an incredible experience. And at the moment that you're liberated from the burden of what this process is, there is so much for you to see and so much value to grasp. See, when you move from characteristics to character and role, you get to play out your part in the movie. You get to see the unique expression that is you, your mythology, your correctness. And there's nobody like you. Now everybody's like you. But there's nobody like you. My work is about the liberation of the individual. That's what I'm here for. You know, I'm an Uranian teacher, an Aquarian teacher. I'm here to give you the message and you do the work. You go do it. I don't have to do it. You know, it's for you to take this and change your life. You know, you understand the mechanism. The mechanism is there. All you have to do is experiment with it. There isn't anything else. There's no great secret that you have to discover that's going to make it any easier than this. It's never going to get easier than this. You have a map. And every time that you don't honor what is you, you're going to feel that pain because you know that it's your not self. You've been introduced to it. You see how it works. You know, once you're living out your nature, you get access to your profile. You get access to your role. You get to live out your mythology. The individual right is the individual human right. And it's the human right, the individual human right, that you are your own authority. That your partner doesn't rule your life, that your children don't rule your life, that your morality doesn't rule your life, that your government doesn't rule your life, that you rule your life. You rule your life by being your own authority. You don't want to be a second-hand decision maker. It isn't going to help you. It isn't going to take you to your truth. You have to have your own authority. It's what it means to live out your design. It doesn't mean that you're going to abandon those people who have become authorities in your life. It doesn't. It simply means that you will be correct. And you will deal with them in a way that's correct. And you will do what is correct for you. And in that you will experience no resistance. See, that's the magic of operating your vehicle correctly. You eliminate the resistance. You eliminate the resistance field that tears you down. You get rid of the power of your mind to hook you on your not self. And you get to see that you're special. Because there's nothing like you. And when you're living by your own authority, everybody else sees that too. It's interesting. It's interesting. And your outer authority, your capacity to express your unique expression is valued. And it's what it's all about. You know, I've been all around the spiritual world. And I've heard an awful lot of nonsense. If you want to experience godliness, if you want to experience the Spirit, you can only experience it in the correctness of the form. This is the vessel of life. It is the vessel. We rent it. We don't own it. It's a gift. We come into it as a passenger. We experience the vehicle. That's all there is. And it's not our life. It's not my life. It's the vehicle's life. And I let the vehicle go the way it must. And I don't interfere. And I honor the nature of the mechanics of the vessel. And I let it go. And I sit back as a passenger. And I look out the windows. And I see what's there to be seen for me. It's beautiful. It's perfect. No pressure. No stress. No fear. It's all impersonal. It's the magic of the movie. Anybody can have it. Anybody. You see, I don't consider myself abnormal. I consider myself normal, and you're abnormal. And this is about being normal. It's not a big deal. I know I do that with children. I don't have to decondition them. It's natural for them to want to be respected. It's natural for them to resonate to being treated according to their nature. It's natural. It's normal. Nobody could ever teach them that before. We can now. You know, it's not like adults that have to go through deconditioning. You know, whatever you do with this knowledge in your process, make sure that you pass it on to your children and your grandchildren. You pass it on to everybody that you know. Protect the children. Give them an opportunity to grow up unconditioned. Give them an opportunity to grow up as themselves, and they will have very, very different lives than most of us led. Very different. Right? I mean, this is the real gift of this knowledge. Okay. Tomorrow I'll see if I can help you out.